Because of a legal dispute involving the company, all my assets were frozen. Lena, my adopted daughter, asked me for the new villa, claiming it was her New Year's gift. I explained the situation to her and said I would make it up to her in the future. But she immediately changed her expression and smashed the glass in her hand. Do you think I'm an idiot? What kind of situation leads to frozen assets? Just say it, you're broke. I knew you couldn't be trusted. Always showing off with a bit of money. Serves you right. She cursed with an ugly look on her face while pulling out a termination of adoption agreement she had clearly prepared beforehand. I looked at her in disappointment, the words stuck in my throat. The company's dispute had already been resolved. There were only 3 more days until my assets would be unfrozen. After working with the police to resolve the company's financial dispute, I returned to my home on the outskirts of Los Angeles, body aching with exhaustion. At the end of the driveway, a dark gray Bentley SUV sat quietly, its headlights flashing twice. I had just stepped onto the porch when Lena burst through the front door and ran toward me, throwing her arms around me in excitement. Mom, you're finally back. I missed you so much. I gently patted her back, my voice soft but laced with fatigue. It's only been a few days. You missed me that much already? She blinked up at me, grinning like a carefree child. This girl, she really did once make me believe life could still hold a kind of tenderness. 3 years ago, I had volunteered with a local youth outreach program, helping the foster care agency screen families for temporary placements. That was when Lena had just come out of her 3rd foster home. Her mother had been arrested on drug charges, and her father had been out of the picture for years. Financially, her situation was dire. There was no one left to take care of her, and the court had placed her under state custody. By then she was already worn out by the very idea of family. The first time I met her, she was leaning against a window in the corner of the classroom, clutching a nearly empty sticky notepad in her hand. I asked, "What do you need?" Without even looking up, she replied softly, "I just want a place where I can sleep in peace." In that moment, I saw the quiet exhaustion and stubborn pride buried deep in her heart. It wasn't a decision I made on a whim. I filed an official application with the state, went through assessments, interviews, training, and background checks, until finally she moved into my home. At first she always said she wouldn't stay long, that I'd eventually get tired of her. But bit by bit I helped her settle in, got her enrolled in school, provided everything she needed, even decorated her bedroom just the way she liked it. Over time our relationship began to shift. I remember clearly, she first called me Mom after one of our family dinners. I didn't say anything then. I just quietly cleared the dishes. But that one word, Mom, stayed with me for 3 years. Eventually, I filed the formal adoption paperwork and made her part of my family in every legal sense. She was smart, lively, and full of opinions. And during that time I truly felt something warm return to my life. 3 years flew by. Mom, it's chilly out here. Come on in, Lena said, clinging to my arm playfully. I smiled and nodded. All right, let's go inside. As soon as we walked through the door, she grabbed my hand and grinned. Mom, you've been so busy lately. You barely made it home last week. I was worried you wouldn't have time to get me a holiday gift, so I picked one out for you. Well, for me, really. She held up her phone, showing an ad for a luxurious lakefront villa. I picked this one for you to give me. It's perfect, right? Prime location, amazing view, private dock. Isn't it incredible? I looked at her beaming face, but a strange feeling stirred in my chest. Lena had always been calculating. I knew that much. But she was still young and I'd never wanted to be too harsh. I kept hoping she'd grow out of it someday. My gaze shifted to the screen. A newly built standalone villa on the banks of Cypress Creek Lake. Lately, it had become something of a status symbol in elite circles, all over social media as the latest luxury flex. On any other day I might not have thought much of it. But the company had just come through a crisis. I wasn't in the mood to take on extra spending. I didn't answer right away. Instead I asked calmly, "You already live here. Why do you need another house?" Her smile froze for a second, but she quickly recovered. "Mom, you work so hard during the day and you need your rest at night. My friends and I want to throw parties sometimes. I just don't want to bother you. Wouldn't it be easier if I had my own place? It'd be better for both of us." She kept talking, her tone light and coaxing, trying to make it sound reasonable. I turned and walked into the kitchen, slowly pouring myself a cup of coffee. My voice was even. This house has 3 floors. The soundproofing is excellent. If you want to have fun, go upstairs. You won't bother me. Her smile faded instantly, a flicker of irritation in her eyes. Mom, do you have to be so stingy? It's just $2 million. That's like a few months' income for you. I paused for a moment, holding my coffee as I walked back to the living room, my gaze calm and steady. It wasn't like I hadn't treated her well. Over the past 3 years I had given her everything. Clothes, a home, everything she could possibly need. I even brought her along to important business events. I had done everything a mother could. But never did I expect that one day she'd look me in the eye and call me stingy. Seeing me remain silent, Lena suddenly lowered her head. Her lips quivered and tears began to fall. I already told my friends I'd take them to see the new villa tomorrow. Are you really going to embarrass me like this? I didn't respond. I simply took a slow sip of my coffee and said calmly, if the villa means that much to you, then let me ask you something. I looked up at her, my voice steady and unhurried. That vacant villa by Cypress Creek, did you give it away? She froze. Her expression shifted ever so slightly. After a moment of hesitation she finally muttered, yes. I gave it to my father. And the Bentley? She rolled her eyes, clearly annoyed. I gave that to him too. I had suspected it all along, but I hadn't confronted her. I thought maybe she'd just loan them out for a while. Nothing worth a fuss. But hearing her admit it now stirred a deep, simmering irritation I could no longer ignore. My gaze turned colder, my voice lower. Didn't I tell you clearly not to handle any of my assets without permission? That hit a nerve. Her face flushed red, her eyes welled with tears, and her emotions began to spiral. That's easy for you to say. But he's my biological father. How can you call him someone else? The place you arranged for him is a dump. Just a glance and anyone can tell he's barely getting by. You really thought that rundown house was good enough for him? Giving him the villa was the least I could do. He's getting old. He never had anything nice in his whole life. What's so wrong with letting him drive a luxury car now? Her voice trembled as her frustration spilled out. You've got so much money. Why is it so hard for you to spare just a little for us? Just a little. It would change everything for us. She spoke like she was entirely in the right, as if everything she'd done was completely justified. In the past, maybe her tears would have softened me. Maybe I would have reached out, patted her shoulder and whispered, I'm sorry, I'd never hurt you. But now, it just felt absurd. So what you're saying is I'm supposed to support you and your entire family? You want me to use my money to give your father the life he's never earned? My voice turned cold, sharp as ice. Do you even know what he's done? He broke into several private estates and stole a pile of valuables. Lena's face went pale. If I hadn't intervened and smoothed things over, he'd be in prison by now. I didn't report him. That was already more mercy than he deserved. She bit her lip hard, her eyes suddenly dark with resentment. How can you talk about my father like that? She snapped, her voice rising to a shrill pitch. I gave up living with him because of you. Can't you show him a little kindness for my sake? He made a mistake, so what? Can't money fix that? You're rich. Why can't you just be generous? I let out a cold laugh, the chill in my eyes unmistakable. And at that moment I saw her clearly for the first time. All the affection she claimed to have, it was just another transaction. She used the title of daughter as leverage to demand a better life. You owe me something today, she said, growing more agitated by the second. I waited for you all night. Don't think you can brush me off with a damn cup of coffee. I almost laughed out loud at her entitlement. The arrogance in her voice was so absurd, I didn't even try to hide my frustration anymore. I stood up, walked to the foyer, pulled the court's asset freeze notice from my bag and returned to the living room. I laid the document on the table in front of her. You wanted an explanation? I said quietly, my voice like a blade. Then take a good look. All of my assets have been frozen by court order. Lena's face froze instantly. She stared at me, a flicker of unease flashing through her eyes, as if she suddenly sensed something was terribly wrong. She took the document from the table and with just a glance, it was like a bucket of ice water had been poured over her. What does this mean? Her voice trembled, her lips quivering. She forced a smile, but it looked more pitiful than comforting. Mom, this freeze order, it's not yours, right? You're joking, aren't you? I don't want the villa anymore, okay? Just don't scare me like this. I let out a soft sigh and spoke gently. Lena, I need to tell you the truth. There's been an issue with the company. And as the legal representative, all my assets have been frozen. Her knees buckled slightly as she stumbled back a few steps, her face turning pale in an instant. It's just temporary, right? It'll be lifted soon, right? Mom, say something. I stayed silent, gently rubbing my temples. Her voice now carried a shrill panic. Don't do this. You're scaring me. Tell me this isn't permanent, please. I leaned back on the sofa, glanced down at the document in my hands, and let out a bitter, self-deprecating laugh. Maybe it'll be over in a few months. Maybe 10 years. Who knows? She stood there, stunned, her expression shifting rapidly. Then without warning she stormed toward me. For a moment I thought she finally understood. Finally realized that even without money she wouldn't abandon me. A faint warmth flickered in my heart. Maybe I hadn't misjudged her after all. But the next second she snatched the coffee cup from my hand and slammed it onto the floor. Porcelain shattered across the room. Oh my God, you're really sitting here sipping coffee at a time like this? Her voice dropped to a chilling growl, eyes filled with disgust. You make me sick. A broke woman pretending to be high and mighty? I must have been blind to ever call you my mother. You've got nothing now, so what the hell am I staying here for? I sat there in silence, staring at her. I couldn't find a single word to say. Every shred of softness left in me was being torn apart by her words. So this was it. Her warmth, her dependence, all of it was nothing but a byproduct of money. 3 years of effort, trust, and patience meant nothing to her. I steadied my breath and forced my voice to stay calm. Lena, money can be earned again. That doesn't mean. And how is that any different from being bankrupt? She screamed, cutting me off. Her cheeks flushed red with rage. No money means bankruptcy. What were you thinking? I stayed with you because I wanted a good life. If you can't even keep that, why would I stick around? Her words echoed through the living room, each one like a dagger to the heart. I looked at her quietly, a bitter smile tugging at the corner of my lips. And in that moment I understood something. Maybe this asset freeze wasn't such a tragedy after all. At least now I finally saw the truth. I had raised an ungrateful parasite through and through. Lena hadn't noticed the shift in my expression. She was still pacing around the living room, complaining without restraint. If I'd known you were this useless, I would have squeezed more money out of you while I had the chance. At least I wouldn't be stuck in this mess now. No way I'm going down with you. Doesn't your company still have a few houses and cars under its name? Sell them. At least give me a cut. She kept rambling, even pulling out a little notebook and scribbling down figures as if she were planning a financial strategy. I looked at her calmly and said, Don't you still have quite a bit of savings? Over the past 3 years, I've given you at least $70,000. Her tone sharpened instantly. That's my money. Her voice rose to a piercing pitch, full of rage. Florence, you're old already. If you end up on the streets, that's your problem. But I still have to take care of my father. Don't expect a single cent from me. I stared at her, my expression unreadable. I softened my voice deliberately, trying to test her. If you could just lend me a little, I might be able to turn things around. Once I'm back on my feet, you'd still enjoy the life you had before. Don't you want to help me? She froze for a second, then let out a sharp, mocking laugh. Do you think I'm stupid? Just look at you, grasping at straws like a miser. Even if I handed you the money, you really think I'd ever see it again? What a joke. And besides, you already got your assets frozen. If I hand over my money now, I might as well throw it in the trash. She waved her hand like she was shooing away a bothersome fly. You should really be figuring out what else you can sell. Add up everything you've got left. Maybe you can scrape enough together to buy a cheap apartment. At least you'll have somewhere to crash. I let out a soft, then said casually, Well, in that case, I'll just sell off that house and car you gave your father too. You wouldn't dare. The words burst out of her mouth, pure reflex. But the moment they left her lips, she realized her slip and tried to cover it up with a forced cough. I mean, sell the stuff that no one's using. No point in letting it all sit around collecting dust. I didn't respond. I just stared at her in silence. I'd seen her true intentions clearly now. She was fine sharing the wealth, but never the hardship. The second she sensed I couldn't provide that comfortable lifestyle anymore, she was ready to cut ties and walk away. Fine. I'd make it easy for her. Oh, almost forgot, I said, deliberately slow, setting down my coffee cup. After the asset freeze, those houses were frozen too. So, looks like you'll be moving into a regular apartment with me. Of course it was a lie, just a test to see how she'd react. She didn't even flinch. Instead, she let out a sneer, her voice tinged with smug satisfaction. My dad was right. Women like you were always going to burn through everything eventually. He warned me not to put too much trust in you. Guess he saw through you better than I did. Good thing I came prepared. She pulled a printed document from the drawer and tossed it in front of me. Sign it. Since we've lived together for 3 years, I'm being generous. Once you sign, my father and I will file the petition with the court. She lifted her chin, looking down at me like she'd already won. If I'm in a good mood, maybe I'll send you some money every month. But don't get your hopes up. I'm not here to support you. I looked down at the statement, termination of adoption agreement. For a moment I just stared at it. Then I let out a quiet laugh. So that was it. She'd planned this all along. To her, I was never a mother, just an ATM on legs. And now that the balance was zero, she was canceling her subscription. She noticed my hesitation and frowned. Hurry up. My dad's waiting for me to come home for dinner. I raised my head, my voice calm. Didn't you say you had a party with your friends tonight? She scoffed, eyes full of scorn. Please. If I hadn't said that, would you have handed over the money so easily? That final sentence stripped away every pretense. I didn't hesitate anymore. I picked up the pen and signed my name. I hope you don't regret this, I said flatly. But she just laughed, carefree and unbothered. Getting rid of a burden like you? I couldn't be happier. As she turned to leave, her eyes landed on a gold-framed photo on the coffee table. She snatched it up without a second thought, then went around the room grabbing anything she thought might be worth something, shoving it all into her bag. At the door, she glanced back one last time. Don't forget, we're filing the paperwork the day after tomorrow. With that, she walked out without looking back. I didn't stop her. I simply watched her leave. After all, those things she took, she'd never be worthy of touching them again. 3 days later, just after sunrise. Before I even stepped out the door, my phone rang, Lena's name flashing across the screen. Hello. What are you doing? I've been waiting outside the courthouse forever. Aren't you on your way yet? No need to panic, I said coolly. I gave you my word, didn't I? I'm not going to back out. Less than 5 minutes later, she called again. Where the hell are you? I've been standing here for almost an hour. I chuckled softly, a hint of irony in my eyes. She thought she could take everything from me and walk away without consequences? Not a chance. And now she was so desperate to cut ties. It only made me more curious to see the look on her face when she learned the truth. I took my time. Washed up slowly, changed into fresh clothes, dried my hair strand by strand. Then I got in the car and headed to the courthouse. From a distance, I spotted Lena pacing impatiently at the entrance with her long-lost biological father, Rick Dawson, trailing beside her. As soon as I stepped out of the car, Rick's eyes locked onto me. Gone was the groveling posture he'd worn before. Now he stared openly, even boldly, with a smug expression and a hint of provocation in his gaze. I remained calm and said evenly, "If you're so eager to lose those eyes, I'd be happy to help." He flinched. Just slightly. His smugness slipped for a second, then he forced a shrug and muttered, "Florence Dawson, you're still putting on airs? What makes you think you're in any position to talk tough now?" I smiled faintly, my eyes sharp as glass. "You sure about that?" Even with the company's troubles, the authority I carried, honed over years, wasn't something a man like him could ever match. Rick didn't reply, but I caught the way his feet instinctively shuffled half a step back. I smiled coldly to myself. Lena, seeing the tension between us, stepped forward and blocked his path, frowning. "Let's get this over with. I've got plans after this, shopping with friends." I didn't respond. I just pushed open the door and walked in first, calm and unbothered. Behind me, I heard her mutter under her breath, "Pathetic old leech." The words were quiet, but I heard them clearly. I paused for half a second but didn't look back. 2 hours later, the hearing ended. The court was still processing the formal dissolution, but my lawyer assured me there would be no complications. I exhaled slowly, the weight in my chest easing for the first time in weeks. As I stepped outside, I stopped at the courthouse steps and turned to Lena, my tone icy. "What was that you said to me earlier?" She blinked, caught off guard by the question, her expression still half-formed when I leaned in close. My voice was low and steady, but each word landed like ice. "Lena, you can betray loyalty. You can throw away relationships. But don't you ever think you have the right to humiliate me." She instinctively stepped back, a flicker of unease flashing across her face. I straightened up, gave a faint, distant smile and turned to leave. Lena, red with fury, took a step forward to chase after me, but 2 security guards I had arranged in advance quickly blocked her path. "Miss Dawson, your car is waiting this way," one of them said politely. I walked toward the car with steady steps. Just as I reached the door, I paused and glanced back at them one last time, a slow, meaningful smile tugging at my lips. "Oh, almost forgot one more thing," I said casually. "My assets? They were fully unfrozen this morning." The moment the words left my mouth, silence fell around us like a curtain. Then came a sharp, cutting laugh. "You really are something, aren't you?" Lena sneered. "Still putting on a show to protect your pathetic pride? Bankrupt is bankrupt. Stop pretending you're above it all. It just makes you look even more ridiculous." I didn't respond. I simply stood there, eyes calmly fixed beyond her, to the end of the street. And then, right on cue, a brand new red Ferrari rolled smoothly into the parking lot. The polished body gleamed under the morning sun, radiating brilliance. The door opened and my assistant stepped out, immaculately dressed in a tailored suit, every movement refined and precise. He walked over with an easy smile and spoke in a warm, clear voice. "Miss Dawson, this is the vehicle you ordered 2 days ago. I just picked it up from the showroom." He paused briefly, then added, "Also, the company's operations have fully resumed after the temporary leave you arranged for all departments. Would you like to issue any additional directives?" His voice wasn't loud, but every word struck like a hammer, landing squarely in Lena and Rick's ears. They froze in place, stunned as if rooted to the ground, unable to process what they were seeing. Rick may not have understood the full picture just yet. But Lena, she knew exactly what that car meant. That was a limited edition Ferrari. One I had never owned before. And now it had just been delivered, personally, by my assistant. This wasn't a performance. It was reality. This can't be happening," she shrieked, voice on the edge of hysteria, her eyes locked on the car as she stumbled back in disbelief. "You did this on purpose, just to humiliate me, didn't you? You wanted to make me look pathetic, right? You heartless bitch." I kept smiling, watching her unravel without saying a word. The assistant frowned slightly, clearly offended, but I raised a hand gently to stop him. There was no need to argue anymore. The truth spoke for itself. Rick stood there, pale and stunned, sweat beginning to bead on his forehead. And in that moment the realization hit him like a freight train. If it weren't for Lena swearing up and down that I was bankrupt, he never would have dared act so smug. But now, if I'd never been bankrupt at all, then he'd played the fool. "Miss Dawson," he stammered, stepping forward carefully, his voice dripping with false politeness. "So, you really didn't go bankrupt?" I cast him a sidelong glance, saying nothing. My assistant stepped in with practiced ease. "Our CEO has always remained the acting head of the company. The so-called bankruptcy was nothing more than a misinterpretation. A temporary asset freeze was caused by malicious interference from a former employee. Everything has since returned to normal." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card, holding it out toward Rick. "If you still have concerns, you're welcome to visit the company in person." Rick's hand trembled as he took the card, barely able to hold it steady. His face drained of color, his eyes glassy with humiliation. No matter how hard he tried to deny it, the truth was undeniable now. I wasn't ruined. I was stronger than ever. "You idiot," he suddenly snapped, turning on Lena with a furious roar. "You said she was broke. You said she had nothing left. You dragged me here to humiliate her. Now look who's being humiliated." Before Lena could react, Rick was already unloading a torrent of curses, shouting in front of everyone without a shred of restraint. Lena opened her mouth to defend herself, but no words came. Her face turned crimson, her eyes wide with panic and disbelief. Lena collapsed to her knees, clutching my leg as if it were her last lifeline, sobbing so violently it shook her entire body. Mom, I was wrong. I swear I know I messed up. I just let the money get to my head. You can hit me, yell at me, anything, just take me back, please. As long as you let me be your daughter again, I'll do whatever you want. Her voice was choked, tears and snot smearing across her face, her makeup a complete mess. But I stood there motionless, watching her quietly, utterly unmoved. Because I knew this wasn't remorse. It was fear. She didn't want to come back to me, she just didn't want to go back to poverty. This wasn't love. It was calculation. I spoke slowly, my voice calm and unwavering. Lena, from this moment forward, you are no longer a part of my life. She looked up in shock, stunned by the finality in my words. I turned to my assistant. Cancel her access to all trust accounts. Terminate any financial benefits she's receiving. Remove her from all company systems. My assistant responded without hesitation. Understood, Ms. Dawson. I'll have everything processed by this afternoon. I continued. Freeze all her credit cards. Revoke access to any residences and vehicles under my name. No more internal assistance of any kind. Lena panicked completely. Mom, no, you can't do this to me. She scrambled to her feet, reaching out to grab me. I stepped back, avoiding her touch. You made your choice, Lena. You signed the termination of adoption agreement. You gave up this relationship with your own hands. You wanted freedom. Now you have it. Her lips trembled, but she couldn't find a single word to say. But she wasn't stupid. It didn't take long for her to realize. This wasn't something she could undo. He stopped crying. Stopped begging. Her face turned cold and hard in an instant. You think this means you've won? She spat through gritted teeth, her voice thick with venom. You'll regret this one day. You think your money makes you untouchable? You're just an old woman with no one who truly loves you. I stared at her, unaffected. Her insults kept coming, each one sharper than the last, like she was trying to drown her own humiliation in rage. You used me from the beginning. I was the one being exploited. Rick had been standing silently nearby, but now his brow began to furrow. He shifted uncomfortably, visibly uneasy. Lena noticed the change in his demeanor and immediately pivoted, trying to pull him back to her side. Dad, you see it now, don't you? She never really cared about either of us. We were nothing but accessories to her perfect image. The second we became inconvenient, she tossed us aside. Rick narrowed his eyes, his voice low and guarded. What are you saying? I'm saying, we're the real family here, Lena said, forcing steadiness into her voice. Didn't you always say she looked down on us? That she only kept us around for appearances? She's just using us to entertain herself. We're nothing but a game to her. Rick's eyes flickered, her words clearly stoking a long-held resentment. If she's really that heartless, she would have kicked us out a long time ago, he said, sounding like he was trying to convince himself as much as anyone else. Maybe she's just being polite because of the past. Lena jumped on the momentum. She's not being polite, she's just waiting for the right moment to destroy us. If you don't stand with me now, she'll come after you next. Rick faltered, caught in his own hesitation, his expression shifting from doubt to defensiveness and back again. I watched the whole scene unfold with calm indifference. What is this? I said quietly, my eyes sweeping between them. A little father-daughter performance? I tilted my head slightly. You, who pawned off your daughter to a rich woman for comfort. And you, who sold out a mother's love for a taste of luxury. What a pair you make. Rick's face flushed red with anger. Don't push it, Florence. Just because you've got money doesn't mean you can walk all over people. I raised an eyebrow, voice steady but glacial. Money is just a tool. But you too, you're not even worthy of being tools. Lena's face twisted, her last shred of civility slipping. She snarled, Fine. You think you've won? Just wait, I'll crush you one day. People like you always end up being played in the end. I turned to my assistant without looking back. Add both of them to the company's security blacklist. They're banned from all buildings and affiliated properties. And one more thing, I added, my voice softer but colder than ever, everything they owe me, let the law collect it. My assistant nodded. I'll have legal counsel initiate the recovery process immediately. I turned away and walked toward the car, every step measured and unwavering. As of now, I said without looking back, You no longer exist in my world. Behind me, Lena was still screaming, Rick was cursing, but I didn't hear a word anymore. When I pulled into the driveway in my new car, the teapot on the table was still steaming gently. I had just taken a seat, barely lifting the cup to my lips when the doorbell rang. As I opened the door, the scene before me nearly made me laugh. Rick Dawson stood at the threshold, visibly tense. The moment he saw me, he turned and barked at the person beside him, "Kneel." Lena flinched and immediately dropped to her knees without hesitation. Her eyes were filled with panic, her voice trembling as she mumbled, "Miss Dawson, I was wrong. I truly was." Rick wrung his hands nervously, trying to sound apologetic. "Miss Dawson, she's young and foolish. I've already given her a harsh lesson. Please, maybe just give her one more chance." Lena's voice was hoarse from crying, her face streaked with tears, her hair disheveled, and faint red welts and scratches marked her skin. She kept her head down like a prisoner awaiting judgment, her entire body trembling. I looked down at her, unmoved. All the time and effort I had poured into her, what had it brought me? Greed, selfishness, betrayal. What she was suffering now was nothing more than the consequence of her own choices. Rick, seeing my silence, grew more anxious, his mouth twitching as his gaze darted nervously between me and Lena. Just then, light laughter and chattering voices came from outside. "Is Lena here? We're heading to the club together." Two stylish young women stood at the entrance, looking me over with polite disinterest. They hadn't recognized the disheveled figure kneeling on the ground. But as Lena instinctively turned her head toward the voices, the girls finally noticed her and froze in place. Their eyes widened, their expressions shifting in an instant. "Lena, what the hell are you doing?" one of them asked, bewildered. Lena's face drained of color. She scrambled to her feet in a panic, fumbling for an explanation. "It's not what it looks like. I can explain." But I had already seen through that mask she wore so well. What she valued most had never been love. It was appearances, image, pride. And now this was the humiliation she could never endure. I gently raised my hand, stopping her from saying another word, and turned to the two girls with a calm, composed expression. "Lena was once my adopted daughter," I said with a soft smile. "A few days ago she assumed my company had gone bankrupt. She immediately cut ties with me." I tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear and added almost playfully, "Unfortunately for her, that was all part of a setup. And now, someone's regretting it." Lena swayed slightly as if my words had knocked the breath from her lungs. The color drained from her face completely. The two girls exchanged a glance, then smirked with mocking amusement. "I knew it," one of them scoffed. "She always bragged about how much pocket money she had, acting like some self-important heiress. What a joke." Lena's eyes widened in disbelief. "How can you say that? I gave you gifts, bought designer bags for you. You think we cared?" The other girl snapped with a cold smile. "You really thought a couple of handbags would buy friendship? Grow up, Lena." With that, they turned and walked off without another word, not even a goodbye. Lena stood frozen in place as if someone had dropped her into a block of ice. Her lips quivered, but she held them tight, trying not to fall apart completely. I really know I was wrong," she finally said, her voice choked, her arrogance now completely gone. "You loved me so much once. Don't I deserve a second chance?" I lowered my eyes and looked at her, not with hesitation but clarity. I wanted to see if she finally understood what she had truly lost. But in her gaze I still saw no remorse. Only helplessness. Only fear. She wasn't sorry. She was just afraid of slipping back into the life she thought she had escaped. So I spoke softly but firmly. "Lena, the most extravagant thing in this world isn't a luxury car or a designer bag. It's a person's heart. And you've already spent it all." Her face fell completely. She knew this time it was truly over. She turned and walked away without another word. Rick lingered, trying one last time to reason with me, but when he saw my resolve, he muttered a curse under his breath and followed after her. I stood there watching them disappear from my life. 3 years of memories unraveled in mere hours. Scattered, hollow and gone. It wasn't that I was heartless. I had once loved her deeply, truly tried to raise her into a strong and decent woman. She had once served me tea in the kitchen, once tried, clumsily but earnestly, to throw me a surprise birthday dinner. But a heart doesn't rot overnight. And deep down I knew, if I hadn't stood at the top, she would have never worn that mask so convincingly. I closed my eyes for a moment and exhaled slowly. Perhaps what truly allowed me to let go wasn't whether she repented, but the fact that I finally understood. There was no longer a need to hold on to right or wrong to justify our bond. I stepped back inside. The tea had gone cold. Outside, the breeze danced softly with the curtains. I brewed another pot, walked out onto the balcony, and stood watching the sun slowly sink behind the horizon. And for the first time in a long while, the world felt quietly, peacefully still. Early the next morning, I returned to the company. As soon as the elevator doors opened, the receptionist nearly burst with excitement, greeting me with a bright, almost trembling voice. "Miss Dawson, welcome back." I walked through the office floor and every employee I passed nodded respectfully. Some even subtly wiped at the corners of their eyes, their expressions a mix of relief and admiration. I hadn't realized until that moment just how deeply rooted my presence was here, how much it truly meant to everyone. My assistant followed me into the office, launching into a briefing on the new quarter's market strategies and ongoing projects. I listened attentively, no longer rushing to give directives like I once did. Instead, I took my time, allowing every department's voice to be heard, slowly reclaiming the rhythm of leadership with clarity and calm. By afternoon, golden sunlight filtered into the office. I was seated at my desk, sorting through an old set of files, when there was a soft knock at the door. "Miss Dawson," my assistant said gently, "this just came in, it's a courier delivery. The sender is Lena." I paused for a moment. It was a deep blue document envelope sealed with a gold-edged label, just like the ones she used to love. She used to say, "It's the little details that define true taste." I opened the envelope. Inside were a few sheets of legal paperwork, and a neatly folded handwritten letter. The handwriting was hers. Familiar, though stripped of the usual flamboyance and flair. "Florence, I know I no longer have the right to call you Mom, but please allow me to write this letter. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not trying to earn your sympathy. I just wanted to offer a little sincerity, however late it may be, to make sense of this relationship that spiraled out of control." I leaned back in my chair, reading each line, the sincerity in her unpolished words settling in quietly. Recently, I found myself back in the place I thought I'd left behind. My dad's apartment. It's old, damp, and the hot water takes over an hour to come on. Only then did I truly understand the kind of life you gave me, how vastly different it was from everything I knew before. But my regret isn't just about hardship. It's not about missing the comfort. I regret that when I tore away the label of being your daughter, I also ripped apart every piece of my life that was worth honoring and being grateful for. It took me an entire week to gather the courage to write this. And if I were just trying to win you over, I wouldn't have included the legal documents enclosed. I'm voluntarily returning everything you once gave me. I don't deserve to hold on to any part of your world. But I do hope, even if not as a daughter, at least as someone you once showed kindness to, I can give myself a chance to start again. By the time I finished the final sentence, my fingertips had gone slightly cold. I'm not someone who softens easily, but in that moment I didn't feel cold either. I knew she might still be immature, might not fully understand the weight of her actions, but she had finally begun to face herself. And that was the beginning of growth. I didn't write back. I simply placed the letter gently to the side. That evening, I instructed my assistant to make a discreet donation, anonymously sponsoring Lena's enrollment in a vocational retraining program focused on market analysis, the very field she had briefly touched during her time at the company. I had no intention of telling her where the funding came from. I didn't need her gratitude. I just hoped she wouldn't waste her second chance. A few days later, a friend dragged me along to a community charity dinner. The venue was warm and elegant, filled with the soft hum of old-school jazz drifting through the air. For a moment, I forgot how much I used to resist these kinds of social events. As I stood with a glass of champagne, exchanging small talk with a woman nearby, a calm, low voice spoke beside me. "Florence Dawson? I've heard your name before." I turned to see a man standing beside me, modestly dressed, his presence understated yet grounded, with a gaze that held just the right balance of respect and curiosity. "I'm Samuel Pierce," he said. "I run the Community Health Fund. I heard you've been reshaping your business direction lately." I smiled lightly. Seems I've become something of a headline in certain circles. He chuckled, his tone sincere. I'd say you sound like someone worth listening to. In that moment I realized, there is a kind of gentleness that doesn't come from power, negotiation, or strategy, but from being met as an equal, and being respected simply for who you are. Life returned to normal faster than I had expected. I once believed that losing certain people would leave a permanent void, but the truth is life doesn't pause for heartbreak. It quietly stitches itself back together in the spaces left behind. The crisis at the company had passed, and I had been the one to turn it around. With a renewed vision, I revived a long-delayed interstate market integration project and began reconstructing the company's core business framework. Every morning I stood at the head of the conference room, breaking down strategic blueprints with clarity and precision. My colleagues no longer saw me merely as the company's leader, but as something more, an anchor, a symbol of purpose. Now that Ms. Dawson's back, someone whispered once, we've got direction again. I heard it and smiled. Outside of work I began to rebuild the parts of my life I had long neglected. I planted the first sprig of lavender in the garden, Lena's favorite scent once upon a time. On sunlit afternoons I'd brew oolong tea, sit in the wicker chair and watch the breeze flutter through the flowers. Neighbors would stop by to say hello, and for the first time, I no longer felt like I was watching life from behind glass. I picked up painting again, something I'd left behind in my younger years, and converted the upstairs storage room into a studio. The work wasn't great, but it brought me peace. I even began planning a long-overdue trip. Maybe to see the snow in the Colorado mountains. Maybe to listen to the wind along the coast in San Francisco. Not an escape, but a real departure this time. One with intention, not avoidance. Sometimes Samuel would join me for dinner. There wasn't any sweeping romance between us. He was simply a kind, thoughtful man. We talked about books, markets, family histories, and occasionally the quieter regrets of our past. You seem steadier than most people I know, he said one evening. I laughed gently. It's not steadiness, it's learning not to cling so tightly anymore. There was no urgency to draw closer, no need to force a bond. And I finally understood. Some companionship doesn't need to be called love to be deeply comforting. Lena. I never reached out to her again. But through a community project coordinator, I heard she was attending her courses diligently. Her attendance record impeccable, and she'd even volunteered for the mentorship program. It made me think, maybe she was starting to understand. True redemption doesn't come from others handing you a second chance. It comes when you choose to stand up for yourself. I didn't interfere with her new life, just as I hoped no one would interfere with mine. Outside, the moonlight spilled across my desk. I turned a page in the novel I'd been slowly working through, letting my fingers trace the quiet texture of the paper. This year I had lost so much, and gained even more. And I finally understood. Happiness doesn't come from possessing someone or owning more. It comes from no longer fearing what might be lost. Because once you find the courage to walk alone, you realize you already have everything you need. There's still so much I don't know about the future. But I know this much. I am strong enough and soft enough to meet every tomorrow as it comes.